This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
But yeah, I'm definitely excited to do this. I'm definitely excited to get your thoughts on some things. I know when we talked originally, we were talking about some mental health and some self improvement, and just the whole there's an array of things we can talk about. I feel like, but can you just kind of introduce yourself and just kind of preface the conversation? Anything that you think is relevant or that you want to
Sure.
share?
Yeah. So it's great to be here. My name is Dr. Fred or Fred Moss, or some people call me Dr. Moss as well, and or just Fred. And anyways, who I am is I am a doctor. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm an out of the box psychiatrist, kind of a different mode than most people are used to. And what I do, I call myself the undoctor. And as the undoctor, I undiagnose people, unmedicate people, and then in the process, undoctrinate people, like taking people out of the conventional psychiatric system as a rule. And here's the point. The conventional psychiatric system is broken. And, a lot of the medical system is broken, but I can speak directly to the conventional psychiatric system. So we take on people who are feeling uncomfortable. They come to see us, and then we give them a diagnosis to confirm that there's something wrong with them, when maybe there's really nothing wrong with them. Maybe they're just living a regular human experience. And then we give them medications, or we give them some sort of treatment that actually perpetuates the fact that there's something wrong with them. And so sometimes the medication itself actually causes the imbalance that people thought they had when they came in the first place. And now they actually do have a chemical imbalance because they've started taking medicine that gives them that actual imbalance that perpetuates or increases or in fact induces or even causes the symptoms they're marketed to treat. So, I've been in the field for about 45 years, Cody. I was there. I started in 1980, and I started after I dropped out of college for the second time. I realized at that time I would never, ever go back to school for any reason. And my mom made me get a job. And, that's how moms are. I got a job as a child care worker in a state mental health facility. And I like to say that I'm really still a glorified child care worker. That's where the work as a mental health mental health technician really started. And that's where I learned a simple fact that I now know to be true as my travels around the country and around the world have confirmed. And that is, at the heart of all healing, of all conditions, of all types, is a human connection, like we're doing today. When we actually connect with another person, when we actually resonate, when we actually have a conversation that is aligned with each other, where we can listen to each other and see each other and hear each other for who we are and who we're not, that's where healing takes place. And that goes true for all conditions, not just even mental health conditions, but all physical conditions, all spiritual conditions, all emotional and all intellectual conditions are really healed when we connect with another person. Now, I learned that back in the day, and I'm not saying anything you don't know. I see you shaking your head up and down because we all really know that.
Right.
We pretend that isn't the case. We pretend that we have a condition, and that if we go to a doctor, then they can diagnose us and tell us what's wrong with us and then give us a medication to somehow balance an imbalance. But that is not the way it really works. That's just not the way it really works. And we've also all known that. So I'm not saying anything that is entirely controversial here. The truth is that, as I grew up in a family, I had two older brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me. And when I arrived on the planet, there was a fair amount of chaos and disarray in my family. That's what I was told. And my job was to bring kind of joy and love, a bundle of joy is what they said I was. And, I was told for my first couple of years, that's what I did. I had a great laugh. I've seen videos of me back in the day. I was fun. I was precocious. They taught me how to do things that regular 3 and 4-year-olds didn't know how to do. And by the time I got to kindergarten, for instance, I knew how to read. I already knew how to do some math. And my friends certainly didn't know how to read or do math. So I was always ahead of the pack. And in elementary school, there's no teacher who forgot having Fred as one of their students, because I spoke a lot. I was really interested in speaking and making myself heard. over time, I thought that school was going to be the place where I communicated, where I learned how to communicate. I was so enchanted with the whole notion of communication. I would watch my brothers and my parents speak to each other, and it seemed so important that they would get things done. They would say stuff to each other. Maybe they'd be angry or emotional one way or another. I really remember vividly watching them from my playpen and, really thinking, oh yeah, I want to someday be a communicator. And, what I've learned over time, especially I'd say after I got hired at the Fairlawn Center, the child care worker space in 1980, was that, communication is a lot more than just speaking really well. Like at the heart of communication is listening, really listening to the other person or listening to what is attempting to be emerged. What is out here, what's really being called for. And so communication is a two-way street, but even listening is probably more important than speaking. In the end, what gets heard is more important than what gets said.
Yep.
We already know that. If I say something and you hear me say something that isn't something I thought that I said, and you say I said it, we just defer to the fact that you're right. I mean, you'd say, hey, Fred, I saw you say that. I heard you say that. I'm like, I didn't say that. You say, yes, you did. And then you're right. It's like, okay, well, let's fix it, or let's confirm it, or let's clarify it. So listening is something that I've been working on in the last half of my life, and I'm not that great at it. I don't think anybody's very great at it because I'm constantly thinking in my head, what am I going to say next? Or how do I look? Or what is it? Have I said the right stuff? And it's hard to set aside all of that and actually care a lot about what another person or a group of people are trying to put across. What's the point? What's the circumstances? What is attempting to be emerged? What's happening? And, that's where the real magic of being a human and being a contributor really takes place. So over time, I had a rip-roaring, I went back to school, obviously. I went back to school so that I could go into psychiatry. And so, finished my undergraduate degree and then got accepted to medical school and went to medical school and finished my residency and then did a child and adolescent fellowship. And the whole point was I disliked psychiatry. That's why I went in. I went in because I didn't like how it was going. Medicines had been developed while, Prozac was developed while I was in medical school. And Prozac was the grandmama of the new age medicine. So Prozac was the first antidepressant that wasn't a tricyclic antidepressant, and there were books written about it, and it was thought to be like the panacea, the elixir for all problems. In fact, you're way too young to know this, but in 1987, 1988, when Prozac was all the rage, and it had been alone on the cover of Newsweek and alone on the cover of Time in the same month, a picture of Prozac. The idea was that maybe we could put it into the water system of the big cities and actually fix everybody. Wow. It's made it into the water system because people throw out their pills and put it in the sewage system. And then it does, in fact, end up in our water system. But that it was meant to be intentional at the time. And fortunately, I don't think that they did that. And we've later learned that Prozac in and of itself doesn't do what we thought it did. We thought we had developed a new theory about the serotonin release system and that serotonin depletion is what equals depression, but that has never been proven. It's kind of mythical and mystical for that matter, and kind of vague and arbitrary and really not even true. And, what many people notice is that the antidepressants, even the serotonin antidepressants, actually give you a surge of depression. And it's stated right there on the side effects. The FDA was kind enough to put that into the side effects of that particular parent drug. And then we've got all the complexities of all the generic drugs, which aren't the parent drug after all. I mean, they don't look like it. They don't taste like it. They don't, there's nothing very similar, in fact, to the generics and the parent drug. I have an analogy I can give you a little later about really how to understand generics. And though they work less, whatever the parent drug did, these things don't do, but they only cost $4 a month. So people are like, line up around the block to get their generics and think they're getting the same drug, but they're not even getting the same drug. And I'm not even sure the same drug would matter because the same drugs suck too. So it doesn't really matter whether they get the parent drug or not. And it's not like I hate medicines. I don't hate medicines. It's just part of what's so in this world. People are pretty sure when they're stuck or they're uncomfortable that there's something wrong with them. And what I'm here to really tell people and help people get is that maybe, just maybe, there's nothing wrong with you at all. And being uncomfortable, really, totally, seriously uncomfortable, might be part of being human. And it might not mean there's something wrong with you. I mean, even being scattered or being afraid or being anxious or being depressed or, being weird in a social environment or remembering past traumas or, being angry or being impulsive or having trouble sleeping or having trouble talking in a crowd or having trouble, paying attention. Like all those things that typically represent the essence of psychiatric disorders or of diagnosed psychiatric, they might just be components of what it means to be alive in this crazy world of ours. You have noticed the world is crazy, right, Cody? I just want to make sure that you're one of us on that.
Yes, I've noticed that. Yep.
All right. Yeah. It's because, I just want to make sure you're on the same side of me of that the world is delivering lots of crazy stimulation and crazy ideas and notions every single day. And we're being asked to actually incorporate them. And if there's something wrong with our capacity to incorporate them, we think there's something wrong with us.
Right.
It's like, dude, you have no chance getting the world. How about that? No chance actually fitting into this world. And when you get that, even the people who look like they fit in don't fit in, like nobody fits in. Nobody gets this. Nobody. Mm-hmm. Nobody is getting it. Nobody, not even that guy who you think gets it. Maybe you have an icon, maybe you say Rogan gets it or Ferris gets it, or maybe you think, I don't know, Robert Kennedy gets it. Whoever you think gets it. No, they don't get it either. They're just tumbling through this world as well. And they're highly uncomfortable day after day. I promise. Highly uncomfortable one way or another. And if you come to a psychiatrist or you come to the mental health system saying, I am so uncomfortable because I have fear of pending doom, or I have a memory that won't go away, or I have thought processes that make me angry, or I feel nervous or anxious about my wife or about my spouse or about my kids or about my job, or I don't feel good enough. All of those things, dude, welcome to humanity. That's really, let's be real about this. Let's be real. There's nothing wrong with you. However, if I tell you that there's something wrong with you because I have the hubris and I have the arrogance to think that I can label you something wrong, you're likely to buy that because you want to know there's something wrong with you so that you can say stuff like, well, good, that wasn't me. That was my condition. The reason I yelled at my kids, I have ADHD, dude. That's why, and, we relinquish responsibility for the parts of our life that we don't like. And it's not across the board, by the way. So, I like to give a disclaimer when I make this discussion happen. And that is, if you feel there's something wrong with you and you have been confirmed by a clinician that there's something wrong with you and you really love the treatment that you received and it's life-saving and you couldn't be happier and your life is totally working as a function of getting your diagnosis and getting the treatment that they put in place for you and life is cool, then please don't change horses in midstream. Like just stay exactly where you are. Mm-hmm. Because if you have found anything in life that's working at that level, you need to just keep it for sure. I'm not here to tell you to get off that train at all. But I want you to get that I'm not speaking to you either today. I'm speaking to the hundreds of millions of people who don't feel like that, who feel like they've misdiagnosed or they've been misheard or undertreated or overtreated or their medicine doesn't work or the therapy's not helping or their life isn't getting better or they're getting slower or they're getting fatter or they're getting more angry or they're getting more hopeless or helpless or they're feeling like life isn't worth living. I'm talking to those people. And literally, Cody, that's an epidemic. Talk about an epidemic. That there is an epidemic. That is an unquestionable. There's not two sides on that one. Mm-hmm. There's not two sides about whether or not that's an epidemic. I used to ask questions when I first got out of medical school. I did some speaking engagements. And I used to actually ask people, is there anyone here who knows people who have mental illness? And only a spattering of hands would come up. You understand that in any crowd right now, if I would ask that question, do you know somebody who has mental illness? Exactly 100% of hands would go up.
Mm-hmm.
And most people would think it was them.
Right.
This
So
is called epidemic.
exactly, 100%, man. We're on the same page, 100%. I have so many things that I want to say right now, and I'm trying to I'm trying to take all this in because I'm almost. So let me make sure I'm understanding this. What I think is correct here. You said that your goal is not necessarily just to meet with someone and put them on a medication and send them
Not
on
at
their
all.
way.
No.
Your goal is more of just, I don't know, maybe getting the people off the medication, which I'm gonna be honest with you is kind of not what I expected to hear. Just from the, well, I think you mentioned it, just the current state of how things are. Because I think you're exactly right. I think that people feel something that is uncomfortable or something they don't know and they've never felt before, and they go speak to someone, and unfortunately, a lot of the times there is a label put on that, whether it's a disorder or whatever, and there's a hypothetical cure that seems to be given out for that. And it's just like, something I speak on a lot is like being depressed, clinically depressed, and feeling depressed are two different things. I feel like most people who say they experience depression, and I understand that unfortunately there are a small percentage of people who do have that, who do, like you said, who do need that. But I just feel like a lot of people, man, if they were just to change their diet, get the proper sunlight, change how they sleep, change, their environment. I mean, I feel like this, I don't know why this isn't a primary source of treatment, but I feel like if we were to try these things first, we would never even go down that route. But I think too, though, that a big part of this is, for some reason these days in the culture that we live in, there's this immediate gratification, syndrome almost. I mean, we it's like a lot of us want something immediate and right now. And it seems like a miracle drug, let's say, is the fastest way to do that. Because I've talked about this before. I know guys, this is kind of going off in a different area, but I know guys in their 20s who want to get on testosterone replacement just because they think it will, and I mean, maybe it will, I don't know, but they think that it will make them become stronger without them having to go to the gym and be fit. And I'm like, dude, it doesn't work that way, man. You can't, I mean, maybe it does. I don't know. If you have more free testosterone in your body, I'm sure that has effects, but it's like put the work in, like you have to put the work in to get the work. So anyway, I'm actually kind of, I'm actually kind of amazed and relieved that you're saying this, because I feel like you're exactly right. I feel like most of the time it's the opposite. Most of the time somebody goes to see somebody and they're labeled with this disorder that maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. But the problem is, like you said, people sort of take this identity on. They take this as like, I have this problem. Like it's like, oh well, I have depression.
I am this problem. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so that becomes your identity, man. And it's like, once that becomes your identity, how do you break out of that? Because then, like you said, like all these other, like, oh, well, I did this because I have this disorder, and it's just like, where, but I mean, I love your analogy about asking people who they know that has a mental disorder, because that's 100% right. Everybody would raise their hand, and probably at least 50% of the people that raise their hand would think that it was them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
and the other 50% will have somebody in their inner family that is already diagnosed or undiagnosed. That's what they say. Well, I know my brother has an anxiety disorder, but he hasn't been diagnosed. Everybody not only knows somebody, but it's in their deep inner circle that has this thing called mental illness. And maybe it might turn out that none of us have mental illness. Now, you made an important distinction. You thought that there's a difference between being depressed and having clinical depression, and pointing to this group that has this condition that you think is like a confirmed clinical depression that they can't escape from, that has come from the sky like a virus or a bacteria and eaten them up. And now they have depression like that, and that it's not movable. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. I believe that those people, among all other people, also can be shifted from clinical depression, and frankly could be shifted without medication. And the way that they do that is by doing some of the things that you talked about. Get yourself out in the sun, get yourself into some nutrition, surround yourself with great people, do some beautiful reading, do some beautiful journaling, make sure to meditate. You saw that I was finishing my breathing earlier when we got on, my Wim Hof breathing that I do each morning. I take a cold shower every single morning. And I'm not the epitome of health by any stretch of the imagination, but there's different things that you can drink. You can drink herbal teas. You can take in celery juice. You can do volunteer work. Doing service work is just magical. You can do creativity, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those kind of things. If you did all those things, if you did a gratitude list every single morning, like waking up and thinking of 10 separate things that you are grateful for, and put on that filter right away, it totally alters the way the world occurs to you. And if you get that the world, even in the face of all the potential calamities that you can imagine, and there are many, countless, it is not hard to find a reason to be miserable. If it is simple, it would take me 1 second to find a reason to be miserable. And that's because I could have done it in milliseconds, but I slowed down and took a second. Right? There's lots of good reasons to be totally afraid, to be totally depressed, to be totally miserable. If you seek out that evidence, that's there. And I don't have it that there's actually a chemical imbalance, that somebody is like irreversibly depressed and needs medicine in order to turn that. On the heels of that, though, I still want to talk to the people that are pretty sure they got it going on inside of their depression and their treatment, and they got the perfect alignment, so they're getting the best life that they could possibly imagine, and wouldn't want to trade that for door number 2 ever. So, okay, you stay where you stay. If you've got something going on that you're happy with in your life, and you're pretty sure this is as good as it's going to get, and you're happy with it, well, by all means, you got to stay where you're staying. But that isn't confirming that they have something called irreversible clinical depression. That's confirming that they're satisfied with what they have, which is the goal of life. The goal of life is to be satisfied with what you have. Really getting, because it's not we all think that now should be different than it is. Do you get how ridiculous that is? How ridiculous it is to think that now should be different than it is. Do you get that no one has ever lived in a now that was different than it was? Ever? Not even, how it is every single now is simply how it is.
Right. Yeah.
How it is every single now is how it is. How is it right now? It's this. This is what's happening now. That doesn't mean that you can't make it, head towards improvement in the future. But what's going on right now is going on right now. And right now can't be different than it is. So when we start really getting aligned with what does it mean to be in the here and in the now, and when our expectations start to match our reality, like we have expectations, and the distance between our expectations and our reality is where the dissonance happens. It's where the depression happens. We think things should be different than they are. And since they're not different than they are, we're depressed or nervous about how it is. But what if we just things are the way they are. That's, the ball's on the 42-yard line. That's where the ball is. I'm sorry. That's where the ball is. It's not in your end zone. It's not in their end zone. It's on the 42-yard line. That's where it is. Sorry, that's just where it is. You want it to be somewhere else? That's great. It's on the 42-yard line. You want to move it to the 48-yard line after the next play? Okay, go have a play, and then we'll see where the ball is after you have your play. And it'll be on the 48-yard line or wherever it is. You may lose yards. Maybe it'll be on the 38-yard line. Okay, all that's really clear is what's happening now is what's happening now. Now, that's hard for people to imagine. I saw your wheels turning like, well, is he saying something that's sensible here? And it turns out that I'm saying something totally sensible. We have audacity to think that now should be different than it is. Like my cat sitting right here, my cat doesn't think that, I promise. My cat is like cool with the now. And we could be cool with the now. When we're cool with the now, that's where depression gets eliminated. When we're really cool that things are not different than what they are. When we really get, all the sex trafficking, all the climate change, all the racism, all the wars in Ukraine or in Israel, or all the trauma that's ever occurred, that's what's here. That's it. This is real. It's real. Let's get aligned with that. It's not saying I agree with it. It's not saying I'm cool with it. I love it. It's not saying anything like that. It's just saying that's that's where the GPS is starting from. When we get in order to get anywhere with a GPS, right, you got to know where you are.
Right.
If I send in my GPS and I set it for New York and I'm in, Grass Valley and the GPS is in LA, we're not going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part of really getting it. So the thing that we can get is that each and every human, and I'm talking about 7.8 or 8 billion humans that are walking the face of the earth, really want to be heard and seen for who they are. That's really true.
Mm-hmm.
It's ubiquitous. It's omnipresent. Everywhere you go, every single culture, people want to be seen and heard for who they are. And when we can be with another person, hearing them and seeing them for who they are and who they're not, that's where love happens. That's where healing happens. That's where all sorts of release of tension happens. I've worked in some prisons, right? I've worked in some high profile prisons. I was a psychiatrist in Folsom State, and I was a psychiatrist in Pelican Bay, a couple of different pretty famous prisons in California. And these people, when I actually connected with the prisoners, it was a massive explosion of healing for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think these people are screwed up, but actually they're, in many cases, those prisoners are like less pretentious, more available, more raw, more human than you're going to see out here in the civilian world. And the goal with those folks was to connect. And that's actually the goal inside of the pediatric emergency room. That's the goal inside of halfway houses. That's the goal inside of family events. That's the goal inside of monasteries. That's the goal inside of everywhere. Actually get what's and get what's really there for the other person, and you will discover healing for them and for yourself in a level that no medication in the history of world could match.
Yeah, it seems like this human connection is a very potent source of therapy. It seems like. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been like I don't know, disappointed or feel a certain kind of way, and just that connection with people seems to make things better. I want to backtrack just for a second before we get too far from this. You mentioned about being comfortable earlier, and I think kind of what we're seeing with kind of what you're saying and some of the things that you're explaining here, I think there's this pursuit of being comfortable that we all have. And if something comes along to change that or test that, we think that there's something wrong. But it's like, no, man, if you're trying to, pursue a goal or a career or something, there's going to be points where probably 80% of the time that's going to be uncomfortable. And so we can't just take something or slap something on that to make us comfortable, because I think you mentioned this, not verbatim, you said it differently, but you said that this basically suppresses our growth, this inability to be uncomfortable, because as cliche as it sounds, and as we've all heard, but it's still true, you simply cannot grow inside of your comfort zone. So this is why I think that, and I talking to you about this, man, makes me feel like I don't know if an analogy here to use. It's like a person who doesn't even have a white belt in martial arts talking to like a fourth degree black belt. I don't know. It's crazy to say this, but what I think the problem is, or what I think maybe the solution might be, is to not try to be comfortable, or not focus on not being uncomfortable, is to be able to handle that feeling of uncomfortable. Being able to, it's like I say all the time to people, I say, don't like, especially if you're in a job or a career where you lead people, where you have to manage things. I mean, the majority of your day is going to be solving problems. That's what you're going to be. And so don't just focus on getting through the problem and solving the problem, because there's always going to be another problem. If you can focus on being the person who handles problems, being the person who solves problems, then when these things happen, it's just like, okay, well, that's just who you are, and this is what you do, and you're just able to do these things. But if our life is just trying to be comfortable, pursuing things that make us comfortable, or just trying to, eliminate a problem, I think running away from that, so to speak, is the wrong solution. I think the proper solution might be to understand and realize how to embrace these things and how to persevere from these things. And I think that we're just simply, or at least I wasn't, we're just simply not taught these things, as children or young adults or whatever. I mean, I think you mentioned something about the education system earlier. It is amazing to me that something this basic, and I don't even mean continuing education. I mean the first 12 years that we all go to school, elementary, middle school, high school, whatever it is. It's amazing to me that something this basic is not taught to us, at least in the American education system, about how to, process, how do we feel these emotions, what these emotions mean. We have this negative, what we think is a negative emotion. That's not the end of the world. That's something that's completely normal. This is what maybe this is what it means, but I don't know. I just feel like running away from this feeling of uncomfortable or sadness or, whatever it is. I think that's the wrong solution, because you're always going to be running at that point. I mean, maybe you might get breaks here or there, a couple of years, whatever it is. But if you're going to live a life, I feel like this of any sort of, if you have any sort of achievements in life, whether that's family, career, whatever, there's going to be times where you're going to be tested about how bad you really want that thing. And we can't just try to like get away from that, man. I don't know. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I think we should be
You're saying something very real here. The idea here is that we are really seduced by the illusion of comfort. We really are. As a Western society, we're really seduced by that. We really believe that being comfortable is the status quo, and that we should, when we're uncomfortable, that there's something wrong with us. So, it's easy to get caught up because there's so much comfort, so much like dangling of comfort going on, whether that, all the addictions are efforts to get comfortable instead of being uncomfortable. Or maybe, even food addictions or sex addictions or porn addictions or, smoking addictions. So these are efforts to find comfort in an otherwise uncomfortable world. And we really, get taken offline. There's something about, like you said, embracing discomfort is the only way that I'm going to actually create value in my life. And, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to scratch an itch. It's fun. It feels like it's really good. If you have like really great tasting food that's real shitty for you, that feels good. There's something strange about, I got comfort food. I just ate a bag of chips, or I just ate a pint of ice cream. And I get that it's probably going to make me, or I just ate a Taco Bell meal or something,
Right.
This stuff tastes good. There's some comfort in that. And it absolutely takes me offline, so that, if I'm going to make something happen in this world, if I'm going to be somebody who's actually putting their foot on the ground and making a contribution, it's not only going to be sometimes that I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be uncomfortable most of the time. And I'm talking about real discomfort, like not just like slightly uncomfortable, like a wind in my face, like really uncomfortable, like a snowstorm, really uncomfortable, like a snowstorm with me in bare feet, like getting and announcing and declaring and committing myself to being uncomfortable as a function of how to get things done. As you said, I had never really heard it put this way, but I totally appreciate it, that you can't grow inside of your comfort zone. It's absolutely true. It's like a definition that growth has pain and the unknown associated with it, because you're heading out into an area where you never were before. And we're all a little bit afraid inside of the unknown, and stepping into our strength means stepping into discomfort. Now, this is so important, what you're bringing up with respect to psychiatric illnesses. People come in to see a psychiatrist, to see a psychologist, to see a social worker or a counselor or whatever ancillary person that they're coming in to see because they're uncomfortable, and they don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. They're anxious, they're depressed, they're hearing their intuition, which they're calling voices. They're scared, they're not doing well in social environments. Their boss is upset with their performance, or their wife is upset with their performance, or their kids aren't performing in the way they would like, or they're feeling scattered, or they're feeling, any of these experiences. They have insomnia, or they're sleeping too much, or they're overeating, or they're don't know how to create a relationship, or they're lost some money and they're sad about it, or they, you know, they're just not feeling well adjusted to this crazy world. And the assumption there is that I am to make them comfortable. That's why they came to see me. Like they came to see me so that I could take away their discomfort. And unfortunately, in our present day and age, like I'm going to give you a chemical made in some laboratory, and that's going to make you comfortable to the point of you getting better as a person. Dude, that just is not how that shit works at all. Not at all. I can give you medicine, and what it can do, you know, among other things, it can quell whatever it is that you think you had. Like I can remove your depression by removing your capacity to have all emotions.
Right.
I can do that. There's medicines out there that will smother all of your emotions. And if you stay myopic long enough, you'll see your depression is gone, but so are all your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what those antidepressants often do. So these medicines, I like to, you know, frequently look at them. They're like a Band-Aid, but people say they're like a Band-Aid. I take a Band-Aid, you know, just until I get better. Well, it's like a Band-Aid with a razor blade embedded in it. Now, what would happen if you had a cut, just a normal cut, you know, on your wrist, let's say, and you put a Band-Aid on it with a razor blade in it, it would cover the cut for a short period of time. The cut would stop bleeding. And then the blood would start eking out of the Band-Aid. And we, in our way of thinking, would think the cut got worse.
And then put another Band-Aid on it the same exact way. Put another Band-Aid with another razor blade on it. And then before you know it, we got 5 different Band-Aids on this one single thing.
Yep. Exactly. And that's really seriously how this whole system works. And kudos to the person who developed this business model. Like, no kidding. I wish I would have developed this business model. We'd be living in the hills for sure. I mean, look at it. If you can create a system that perpetuates the conditions that have you need that system.
Mm-hmm.
Good thinking. Really good. And it's not even nefarious. That's why you can't be mad at the drug companies. I'm not upset with the drug companies. That's fine. The people who do that work, they could be your neighbors and they really love what they do and they have a certain cog in the wheel that they do. And inside of what they do, they're not nefarious. They're not corrupt. They're not, angry, or they're not evil. They're just doing one part of a wheel. But if you look at the wheel is just mowing down humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really look at that, you see that each person has a space in it. And if they just look at their small space of what their responsibility is, nothing wrong with what they're doing. They're great people. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
They can be my neighbors. They could be, they could take care of my kids. They could take care of my cats. It's all good. But it's not that where the problem is. Where is the problem? Like, where can we enter this problem in any kind of powered way, any kind of empowered way? And the way to enter this problem, Cody, is by getting that there might be nothing wrong with you. You see, if there's nothing wrong with you, then you don't need to be fixed with medicine. So you won't go seeking medicine to make sure there's something wrong with you. If you can really look in the mirror and get, oh, this shit is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
This life of ours has obstacles. There's so many things that are out of control in the way I look at the world. There are so many things that I've been taught that aren't true. I don't even know what truth is anymore. I have no idea, and neither do you, and neither does he, and neither do they. I mean, and here comes all these artificial ways of, they can recreate me and you with robots right now and have us not even had this conversation, and those two robots have the conversation, and it looks like we had a conversation, and they could say whatever they want to say and call it us.
Mm-hmm.
That is not even far-fetched. That is yesterday's news already. It's really here. So we don't even know what reality is. So, those of us who used to care what reality is, we don't know anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not it. So is that distressing? Yeah, that can be distressing for sure. And in this world of getting that it's impossible to get the world that we're getting, like it's impossible to wrap our arms around and get the whole thing, it becomes an inside job. And when we start realizing, oh, this is it. It's nothing wrong with me here for being confused or being behind or being deficient or being like, insufficient. There's nothing wrong. That's just what life actually creates for us. I'm doing my best and I'm missing the ball every so often. Like often. I'm missing the ball often enough. And my guess is so are you. When I say that, you're not thinking, oh, poor Fred's missing the ball too often. Not at all. You're thinking, hi, dude.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it.
Exactly. And we really, when we can think that there's nothing wrong with us, then we can come to grips with the fact that we're uncomfortable and actually embrace it and appreciate it. Psychiatry or mental health system is the only subspecialty in medicine that when people are told that there's nothing wrong with them, they get upset. Like if
that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right. This is Valentino here.
I don't know is it he or she?
This is he.
I don't know if he can see me. Maybe not. So, but like how, okay. So if the problem is that there's this comfort thing and it's almost like, I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of what it is. If we just slap a prescription on this may be not needed. That to me, this sounds a lot like rose-colored glasses here. It's just like, let me just be blind to kind of what the possible solution could be or what the problem might be. But like, how do people become better at being uncomfortable and being, stressed or whatever the problem is? If we're living this life that's going to have some sort of value and these things are just going to come along, like how can we do this without being basically chemically altered, as people, I guess?
Yeah.
Would be a way to say it.
Well, it's a really great question. And, you have to count on like I woke up this morning realizing that I was too comfortable yesterday. Really, I talked some high level stuff yesterday in the morning that I was going to take on the day and do this and that. And I didn't do most of what I said I was going to do yesterday. So I woke up this morning like, wow, you just blew through yesterday. It's not quite true, by the way. I had 11 clients and I helped all of them. And, we had a great dinner together and I had a super fire here in my fireplace. And, I did meditate and I did take care of, basic needs, took a long nature walk. It's not like I did nothing. I just did. There's a lot of things I didn't do that I said I was going to do. So we start realizing that just seeking comfort doesn't work. I want a life that actually works. I look around at how do people get a life that works? And the way that people get a life that works is they do stuff that's uncomfortable. That's how it is. They lead into, whatever the activity is, and they appreciate discomfort. Now, so the first thing you got to get is your life isn't working, eating Taco Bell every day.
Right.
You have to get that. Or you can, you don't have to get that. You can eat Taco Bell later today. Go ahead. You can have it Taco Bell for breakfast and lunch, as far as I'm concerned. Go ahead. It's there. You can do it. But you have to start getting, this is not the life that I want. Then you have to look in the mirror and realize there's nothing wrong with you. And when you share that with others, or in this case, maybe there's listeners out there who are actually hearing the two of us speak and they maybe admire us or they think that we've got something going on and that we're speaking to a life that works and that we've talked to a number of people in our lives. And, we spend a lot of time looking at how to create a life that works, and maybe they'll be moved by it. So again, at the essence of healing is a human connection. And maybe there's listeners out there who can feel like they're connecting to the two of us this afternoon. And that's fine, that they are. And they, do they need to have a chemical alteration? This idea of a rose-colored glasses would be really like if the medicines were truly just a benign Band-Aid, like that somehow they did actually just cover stuff up and everything was okay afterwards, but it didn't heal it. I'd be good with that. I don't have a problem people putting on Band-Aids. That's fine. You should do that. I mean, with no reason to bloody up the couch, for instance. It might not help you heal, but put on a Band-Aid. But the fact that there's a razor blade in that Band-Aid, that pisses me off. I like, this is actually going to make you worse.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally going to make you worse. I promise this will make you worse in the long run. Now, again, let's not forget the disclaim group that we've already spoken to, the group that's happy with who they're doing. That's fine. And they should keep it. By now, they hopefully have tuned off the show. But if they're still listening, I want them to get that. Keep doing what you're doing if it's working.
Right.
That goes for everything and everyone. If you have found something in this life that's actually working, please keep doing it. Do not argue with whether or not I'm saying don't do it. If it's working for you, do it. Great. And if eating Taco Bell 2 or 3 times a day is working for you too, please keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. The idea is for those hundreds of millions of people where life isn't working. And those people are really scampering around. They're really out there, like scurrying around looking for, how do I make this life work? And the way you make a life work is you become your word. You actually say what it is you're going to do and then do what you're going to say. And so that people actually count on you for being someone who's reliable and accountable and responsible for the way life works for them. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to create a life that works. Actually be the person you say you are. Get a lot of friends that way. A lot of friends.
Well, and this also leads us back to the connection, the human connection.
Exactly.
I want to make a point here, and this isn't funny, but it's kind of funny. But if you can imagine, man, like, we talked about the Band-Aid with the razor blade. There is no person who is going to say they need a Band-Aid more than a person who uses a Band-Aid that has a razor blade in it. So like person, they start this treatment, whatever it is, and maybe they didn't even need it to begin with, but they felt like they need it. But now that they're on it, okay, so these other issues are coming in, all these, the side effects are always like 10 times longer than the benefits. So all these side effects are coming in. So now it's like, oh, well, now they feel like they really need it. And it perpetuates this cycle. Nobody has a good marketing team as well as the people who are on antidepressants who don't necessarily need antidepressants, because those people will battle that point. I mean, they will spend all of their mental, no pun intended, mental and physical resources fighting this argument with you. And it's like, man, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people. I'm just saying, just try these other things first, just try something else first, because if you go out and get sunlight, okay, if you get too much, maybe you get a sunburn, and I understand long-term, that's not a good thing. Okay, maybe there's a side effect there. But if you change your diet, like what's the worst that can happen? If you try to, interact with people more, what's the worst that can happen? For me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. You mentioned the cold shower. My thing is a 3-minute cold plunge, and like 45-degree Fahrenheit water. I mean, that is like, you get out of that thing, you talk about being discomfortable, or uncomfortable, man, you get in that thing, that thing sucks, but it's like overcoming that mental battle. I mean, for some people it's the gym, for some people it's a walk, for some people it's, meditating. I mean, I used to meditate. I actually used to meditate often. And it was very beneficial, I thought, but yeah, I don't know. It's just like these people. I think what discourages me, is that the right word? Discourage is about like how people are so ready to defend this treatment that they may not even need, because it's almost like they're not even open to another option. And I mean, I know it sounds like we're kind of, really hitting the medications, and we've already said that there's people who actually need those things, but it's just like, I agree that I think it makes it a lot of times worse than what it was to begin with, when it could have just been a really simple solution. And, if I just feel like if you have a job and the job sucks or it's demanding or whatever it is, that's very different from a chemical imbalance that maybe doesn't even exist. I think you mentioned that was a fallacy or something earlier.
Serotonin, it's kind of arbitrary fallacy.
Huh. That's interesting, because I always assumed that was like that was a thing. Like there is actually a chemical imbalance, and that's what causes this problem.
They did a great job of marketing to get us all believing that.
Let's do this. Let's take a really quick break, and we'll pick right back up to this, because I want to get into that. We'll be right back. All right. So Dr. Moss, I want to make a shift here, I think, because we've been talking a lot, I feel like, about depression and this kind of thing. But I think that this issue, it seems to me like, anyways, from the outside looking in, that this issue is in more areas than just depression. It's in the mental illness as a whole. Because I'll give you an example, a really major point here. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about dating and relationships, intimate relationships, that kind of thing. And these days, it doesn't take much at all to get online on social media or whatever. And there's an illness that is being thrown around as if it's just free candy or something. And I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about when we say narcissism. Everybody, almost everybody's ex is a narcissist,
Yeah.
But like, okay, so let's break this down for a second. And I don't know clinically the definition of narcissism, but I know, I think what I do think is one major symptom of that is the inability to have accountability for your actions. Is that somewhere in the ballpark?
Okay. Well, if you're going to buy the whole idea of narcissism in the first place, then that's definition. That's part of it for sure.
Okay. So we have these people on social media, online or whatever, and they say they not everybody, but like these people claim that their ex, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband was a narcissist. They did this wrong, they did this wrong. But what I see is a lot of these people there's never anything they did wrong. The person who is throwing the label of narcissist, that person almost never did anything wrong. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, by definition, this lack of accountability sounds like a major trait of narcissism. So to me, what it seems like is this throwing out this mental illness or this label of this mental illness on somebody else is in itself perpetuating the mental illness. So in other words, we are creating narcissists by saying someone else is a narcissist. Am I making sense here? Because
absolutely.
So, but you said something interesting. You said, if you even believe in narcissism. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, narcissism is just shorthand for asshole.
Okay. Okay.
My ex is an asshole because they're, and then they look up whatever definition. I just looked up narcissism in the formal sense while you were talking. So have an unreasonable high sense of self-importance and require constant excessive admiration. Feel that they deserve privileges and special treatment. Expect to be recognized as superior even without achievement. Make achievements and talents seem bigger than they are. Now, there's a case to be made that you need to love yourself before you love anyone else, right? I mean, You've heard that before. You can't love anybody more than you love yourself. The best you can do is love yourself. And then by loving yourself, really getting, when you look in the mirror, when you appreciate who you are, what you do and what you don't do, that allows you to have the capacity to fall in love with another person. And, narcissist is such a derogatory term right now in the community. I mean, There is nobody who's calling somebody a narcissist like affectionately.
Right.
That's not what it is. It's not like it is. It is literally a non-swear word for a effing asshole. That's what that is. And he cared about himself way more than he cared about me. He was totally self-absorbed. He was unresponsible. He was, gaslighted me and all of those. It seems like gaslighting and narcissism have a bedroom relationship together. And, the idea that if someone gaslights or someone ghosts or someone, spends all the conversation talking about themselves, that they are a narcissist. And normally it's the men who are being called narcissists in the relationship more than men calling women narcissists. It's usually women calling men narcissists. That's been my experience anyways. And, it is simply a way to, they come in and they say, I looked up this term on the internet and this person met every single criteria. And now I know I was living with a malignant narcissist. And no wonder my whole life didn't work because I was hanging out. I didn't know he was a narcissist until I actually got to know him. it is, in some ways, it's really, really arbitrary. You know, if someone starts to talk about themselves a little bit too much, if someone feels like if a partner feels like someone else should take responsibility for the pain that they're feeling in the partnership, like if a woman feels that a man should get that he's been a jerk so regularly that that's what's causing her pain. And if he doesn't get that, if he's like, no, actually, I'm not responsible for your pain, he now risks, without question, the possibility of being labeled a narcissist.
Exactly.
Right? Like, he didn't cause the pain. He's got, no, not me. I didn't do it. That's you. It's on you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? I didn't know you were a narcissist. You know, like that's how that really often goes. That's like short. So I think it's just being bantered around in the community as just shorthand for a bad person, someone who didn't care about me, someone who, you know, was rude or bullying or gaslighting or ignoring or ghosting or not paying attention to their responsibility for my pain.
Mm-hmm.
Their responsibility for my pain.
Right. And
can you get, it's never another person's responsibility for your pain, ever?
Well, yeah, but you say that and people don't want to hear that, you know.
I know they don't want to hear that. And they don't. But, you know, you can start getting that it is really the life that people are allowed to say whatever they want. All they're doing is creating vibrations out of their mouth and saying whatever they say or don't say. That's all that's happening. You can decide really whether or not that hurts you. You have a filter there. It's usually underdeveloped. That you can say whatever you want to say, Cody, and it doesn't have to hurt me. You can call me an effing asshole right now. I don't have to be hurt by it. I probably would be. I'd be startled. And it would be like, whoa, I didn't expect that. But it isn't you who hurt me at that point. You said what you said, and then I incorporated it and became hurt. It's not my only option to be hurt by what you say. Kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree with that. And but my point is, now with narcissism being thrown around so freely, it's like anyone who stands up for themselves or states their boundaries or states what it is that they're looking for or need or you know, won't put up with, anyone who basically stands up for themselves is at risk of being labeled a narcissist. And one thing that I really try to preach to people is, you know, is standing up for yourself, is, you know, asserting what you need in the world. Because whether you want to label people a narcissist or whatever you want to call them, borderline personality or whatever you want to put on this thing, unfortunately there are people out there who will pick up on your weakness or whatever it is that you have and manipulate you or whatever. And I'm just saying that people need to be able to stand their ground and be assertive on what it is that they need in their spot in the world and say, hey, you know, this is a boundary for me. If we can't figure this out, this is not going to work for me. Because I think that there's simply way too many people out there who are just kind of freely going along with things and just kind of letting things happen to them versus saying, you know, this is kind of what I need. And of course, if you do that long enough, like I'm sure you've seen this a lot, but I've met people who simply cannot stand up for themselves, can't voice their own opinion. And what that does over time is causes resentment because their own voice is not heard. So somebody else, whether it's a parent or a spouse or a sibling, is living vicariously through this person. And they're like, oh man, well, I'm trying to be friends with all these people. I'm trying to be so friendly. Like, why do I feel this way? And it's like, well, because the life that you're living is not even a life that you want for yourself. Like, you're trying to please everybody else, and you can't, you know, I'm sure there was something maybe in childhood or whatever it was that for some reason they can't voice their opinion. But what I'm saying is, I hope we're not entering into a space where if somebody were to do that, they're just immediately labeled something negative, like a narcissist or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know, you mentioned borderline personality disorder. That tends to be a female thing. So men call women borderline, women call men narcissists. And in the world of psychiatry, both of those things are, interestingly enough, deeply related to each other. And they both come in this the category of a personality disorder. And a personality disorder used to be just something that someone had rather than like a weapon. Like you couldn't weaponize someone like, oh, they're a narcissist personality disorder. Because the same thing holds true with borderline. When a man calls a woman borderline, or when a woman, basically they're saying she's a bitch. That's basically how that works. You're basically saying this is somebody who used to love me and now hates me, and I can't believe it. Or someone who is like impulsive, or someone who like occasionally can be very happy and other times can be totally self-loathing, like, has maybe like lots of different moods and lots of different interactive styles, and is impossible to contain, like just impossible to contain in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's other criteria, and we could look them up. People like think that they've got the criteria. They look up some sort of wiki criteria or some sort of, urban dictionary criteria for what a borderline is. And then they figure out that they feel, oh yeah, she's got all the traits, or he's got all the traits. And then we call it, like you said, a negative label, because it's been weaponized. It was once clinical. It was once used to just describe, personality trait. Let me 1 second.
Okay.
It was once actually, used to describe, like, by psychologists, a certain type of personality style. And it wasn't necessarily derogatory when I was going through medical school to have narcissistic personality disorder or to have borderline personality disorder. Borderline came first. People, it is not a good thing to be called a borderline. There's no one saying thank you when you say you're a borderline.
Right.
And there's no one saying thank you. There's no man saying thank you if some woman calls you a narcissist. You're not going like, or maybe if you're
theoretically, he would already know. He'd be like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm joking.
No, it's true. It's right. He would know. And, we tend to get self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
We do. We tend to we all have narcissistic traits for sure. We look at ourselves in the mirror, make sure that we look good. We wear certain clothes, or do our hair a certain way, or wear tattoos, or whatever we got here. And it's important, we adorn ourselves. And that's narcissistic traits. And in reality, it was when we do that, we're actually paying extra special attention to who we are. And, do I need to be seen as superior? Usually that's like an egomaniac. This phrase of an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I used to heard that phrase, and I think that these days that tends to be roped into this whole idea of, he's a narcissist.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just like what I'm trying to say is I think if we do this long enough on a big enough scale, it's going to invert. So like, if a very small percentage of the population has borderline or narcissism or whatever it is, if we do this long enough, I feel like it's going to invert that, and being a normal person is just going to be like the minority, and then we're just going to promote this narcissist thing or whatever, because it seems like. But that brings us back to, I think, something we talked about earlier, which was the lack of accountability, which we kind of already touched on here. Is like, if something in the relationship did not work, the probability that it was 100% the other person is, I think, extremely low. I mean, like, if it was 100% this person's fault, like nothing is a bigger red flag to me than a person. If I'm on a date if I go on a first date with a woman, let's say, and she's in like every single, the entire hour or 2 hours that it is that we're doing whatever we're doing, it's just like bashing her ex. I'm just going to be like, okay, I got to go, man. I don't know what's going on here, but I mean, just like, but I don't know, man. But I think this lack of accountability thing, this is something that I push too, because you mentioned something about this earlier, the GPS, the starting point on the GPS. How do you know where you're going if you don't even know where you're going to start at?
Yeah.
But I don't think that's so much as big of an accountability thing. I think it's like when you realize where you're at and how far you have to go, I think that makes it more real, you know.
Mhm.
Like if if all I have is a high school diploma and I want to one day have a PhD, okay, that's a long ways away from where I'm at. And so that makes it real. That makes it more real to understand, like, hey, I had to put in a lot of work here to do this thing. But I think all these things that we've talked about kind of we're kind of circling back at this point, the being uncomfortable and all this kind of thing. You mentioned something earlier about addictions, and I think this is something that really gets a bad reputation, man, because I'm sure you've seen it and worked with people, but people I think have a stigma around addictions, and it's like until you see a person have an addiction, because I feel like if you're on the outside looking into this, it's easy to blame the person for the addiction. And I don't
Yeah.
know whether it's a disease or not. I'm just simply saying if it's easy on the outside looking in to blame the person for the addiction. But if you've ever seen a person who is addicted to a thing and this person pretty much hates themselves when they participate in this thing, I mean, that's a very like, it's a very, but for lack of a better word, sad situation to see this. Like this person clearly does not want to be involved in this thing, but they, for whatever reason, they are. Um, so what's your thoughts on that addiction? Like just this sobriety thing, keeping sobriety. I know we mentioned you've already kind of touched on this, but what's going on there? I mean, what can people do to help sort of maintain this sobriety from this thing, or to attain sobriety if they haven't got there yet?
Well, a lot of times, yeah, I think this is a great question, and I'll see how I manage it. It's a difficult question to answer with any kind of authority for sure. And this idea of scratching the itch, scratching the itch, scratching the itch, and a lot of times when it's participation in the addiction, one of the most insidious addictions out there right now is pornography. And we just got to pay attention to it because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry and it's happening underneath the scales and people aren't talking about it. People are generally shameful about it. It's so clickable. It's so easy. Both of us could be on a porn site in 2 seconds from right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no problem. If we say, let me go check out some porn, it'd be like literally 3 seconds, 2
Right.
seconds away. And it's that truth for everyone of all ages, of all types, of all persuasion. The thing with that is that it is compelling. It's naturally very, very compelling, very fascinating, interesting, highly stimulating. And let's just be honest about it. All that is really true. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to, like, it doesn't matter if you're a rabbi or a priest or a child or a woman or a man or, a religious person. It doesn't matter. It's very compelling. It's very, very compelling and it's gripping. And, the thing about it is that once you get a taste of it, it sort of activates that system. And the only way to get rid of the taste, well, in the pornography way, of course, there's releases you can have physiological releases, but then the only callback is going to be to go get more, go get more, go get more, go get more. And, it's self-serving in that direction. It gives you that dopamine bump. And my wife and I have talked about dopamine before, there's nothing that really compares to dopamine. There's
Mm-hmm.
no addiction that compares to whatever these days we're calling a dopamine bump. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure that it's actually a bump or that it's dopamine for that matter, but whatever that is so ridiculously compelling. So then the pain happens. You get the pain after you get involved. You do whatever you do, and that can be overeating. We're just aiming at porn here, but there can be different places that people go, or there can be different drugs that people use, or whether it's meth or fentanyl, or even marijuana, or alcohol, or smoking cigarettes, or vaping, or whatever those things. All those things are pretty addicting in their own right, as is many psychiatric medicines, by the way, very many. And so they have like a substantial downside after you've partaken, where you can be self-shaming. But even in the massive self-shaming, the only cure to that self-shaming seems to be a return to the pleasure center. a return to the actual thing that eventually causes self-shaming. It's like, well, I feel terrible, and I know that I could feel less terrible about this if I did the thing that already has made me feel terrible one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And the cycle is vicious, man. It's totally vicious. And you're right. We know addicts that we love, and we may even have been addicted to things ourselves. And almost everyone. People say I have addictive personality. Well, that's a welcome to humanity. You don't know anybody who doesn't have an addictive personality. Every single one of us has an. We're addicted to shit all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm addicted to my phone, and that's sort of, I'm totally addicted to my phone. I could scroll all day, and I hate it.
Yep.
That's what I was saying. Like yesterday, the stuff that I didn't do yesterday got replaced by me watching way too many Facebook reels. And, I just watched way too many.
Mm-hmm.
I did. They were fun, and they're all algorithmed out, whether it's Larry Bird or Cats or Babe Ruth or
Yep.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, or whatever's there. I'm like, whoa, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool. What's coming next? Or some
Mm-hmm.
pretty girl, or someone jumping off of a cliff, or all the stuff that's been algorithm for my taste buds are, they grab me. They got my attention, and I'm in.
Yep. And I'm so glad to hear you say this, because that was actually going to be one of the points that I was going to make. Was it's easy to say, if you've never experienced or if you've never had a loved one to go through an addiction or whatever, it's easy to be on the outside looking in and say, well, it's this person's fault because they tried the drug or they did this thing or whatever. But it's like, all you're doing is saying your addiction is different from theirs, because people will say, oh, this person's on drugs and it's just they're the worst human being on the face of the planet. But then they'll without control scroll social media or whatever it is, or they're addicted to sugar or whatever it is. And it's like, no, man, it's just your addiction is different from theirs. Your addiction doesn't cause nearly as much damage as theirs. It's like, just let's have a little bit of empathy here and say, hey, this person is experiencing something different from me. Now, I'm not saying that it's excused to try a drug that is known to be addictive or damaging or anything like that. But I'm just saying that I think the battle is different for everybody. It's not that the person has something, anything different than you. It's just what their thing is. And this is my understanding of it. I could be incorrect here, but their addiction is just simply different from yours. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my thing is, physical fitness in the gym. If I have to be out of the gym or physical fitness or whatever for any extended period of time, I get really agitated and I just do not like it. Now, I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. That could be a healthy thing or unhealthy thing. But I'm just saying, man, these things, they're just different experiences. But but where was I going with this? Completely lost my train of thought. I think it's just different for people. But one thing I will say, though, is like when you see somebody who's like breaks alcohol addiction or drug addiction or one of the major ones, I don't, do those people typically replace it with something else, like more of a healthier addiction, whether it's reading or whatever it is, or do they kind of just, because I guess what I'm trying to ask here is, I've seen a couple people overcome alcohol addiction, which is it's a hell of an addiction, man. I mean, yes.
Sure.
And so when these people do this, they overcome this thing. It's like, I don't see them doing anything else, if that makes sense. Like what's going on there? Do we just kind of, in other words, if we have that addictive area of the brain and it is stimulated by this thing for however many years, what happens? We just heal the addiction, and that just, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to ask here.
Yeah, I don't know. I know people that got addicted to AA meetings after getting off of alcohol.
Okay.
That they end up being like, I'm never going to miss a meeting. So what you describe in physical fitness, maybe they go to an AA meeting every day. And I think there is kind of a replacement. I know for me, I know how to be addicted to stuff for sure, and I know for me the way. My pathway out of that is to have a routine. And I have a pretty extensive routine, actually. I have I don't know, if I did my routine every single day, my full routine, it would be like 4 or 6 hours. It just go on and on and on and on. If I include playing piano, if I include journaling, if I include, petting my cats, if I include all the stuff that's actually in my routine, like making sure the cat litter is clean and getting the compost pile out, all this stuff that's, that's part of my daily activity, then in fact, I am addicted, but I'm addicted to things, addicted. What is it? I'm attached to certain activities to get me through the day, and a regimen or being disciplined or obeying, um, I know that there are some addictions that I can dabble in, and I suppose porn is one of those. If I started digging into porn, I every single time that I catch any porn, I am taking the risk of being into porn for the next several days or weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm speaking the truth. It's just human.
Right.
Probably, maybe man more than woman, but maybe not even. I don't even know that that's true. I know that every single time I watch a porn video of any type, I risk being caught up in porn for the next several days or weeks until I finally just say enough and stop. Like, so, I see something or get one more massive bump and I'm like, this shit's got to stop. I forgot about my wife today, or I forgot about my life today, or I didn't take my walk today, or I didn't eat lunch today. It's like, eventually it's like, whoa, I reach my brick wall. And then I do become addicted to something else. Maybe I become addicted to eating very healthy lunches as sort of response, like, okay, I'm not going to go on porn today because what it did is it screwed up my lunch schedule. And now I'm going to start eating really great lunches. And that becomes the thing I'm compelled to do. So the notion of being compelled to do something can be replaced with healthy compulsions, like we can be, I think it's generally understood that if you have a gym compulsion, that's not very damaging. It's not too much trouble.
Mm-hmm.
If you're there for 6 hours a day, it starts being damaging. But if you're there an hour a day and you're just pounding up some iron and you're, getting on the treadmill and doing some swimming or doing pull-ups or, working the medicine ball or working the some, tyrant machine or something like that, good for you. I mean, no one's going to argue with that being good. Or running is another one. Jogging or riding your bike. It's like, those are compulsions too. Why do you even do that? Well, it feels good to do that. And it has a reward associated, some sort of dopamine bump that's associated that isn't the same as, sitting in front of your computer getting toasted by Facebook reels or porn videos.
Right. Well, that pornography one thing, that thing is like, that's a big one, man, but you don't even have to go that far because now like dating is on an app. Like you can date or go out and meet a potential date on an app. And it's crazy because going back to the human connection thing, this is the whole reason I'm bringing this up. And I can't speak for women, but I do think that this is way more damaging for men than it is for women, because I think traditionally the man has, approached the woman in public or whatever and try to introduce himself, which a lot of guys, like in the younger guys, can't even do these days because of whatever, social media or the dating apps, whatever. But like, I've had women actually tell me that they wish they would be approached more often than they are in public. And I don't mean in a creepy way. I don't mean in any kind of crazy shit. I mean, just a guy, like basically what they ask is, where are the guys who come up and introduce themselves anymore versus, the guy who just gets in the Facebook inbox and says whatever generic thing he says. But it's like, I think that is a skill. That's an ability to walk up to, and not even just a woman that you find attractive or whatever, just like a person, you see a person in a coffee shop reading a book. Oh, that looks like an interesting book. I want to go up and, find out about that. I mean, I think this ability to introduce yourself to people, to walk up and say who you are and whatever, this is like, it's almost like it's a skill that seems to be lost these days because people just simply can't, because everything is on the phone. We can get on the phone and we can, I don't know why people think that Facebook is this dating app, but it's like these people go online and they try to pick up, I don't know, whatever, but it's just like, this is a skill that's lost, man. And we have to ask ourselves, like, at what point, is this replaced by this? Like, at what point is introducing yourself to someone and doing that, what point is it replaced by the social media thing, the dating apps or the whatever, the swiping left and right or whatever it is.
Yeah. It's a crazy challenge, and we start looking at AI and all of a sudden you don't even have to date humans anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I'm laughing. It's not funny because that is I would say it's a threat. I wouldn't say a possibility. Yeah. It's a real threat.
It's a real threat for sure. You do not have to date humans anymore.
But like what?
That is,
I mean, the obvious point of that, I guess you could say, okay, let's take the hypothetical route for a minute. And this is, I mean, if that's your thing, if you want to date AI, whatever, I'm just saying, but let's just take the hypothetical route. Let's say if a person, let's say that is a bad thing. Hypothetically, a person wants to date an AI person. Well, I guess on the upside of that is those people will not procreate because like, how could they, so that's just kind of that, whatever that little tendency is kind of going to die off eventually. But it's like, how does that replace human connection, man? Especially, and I'm asking you because you speak a lot on human connection. Like it doesn't, I don't think it can.
Well, it's interesting. So one of the things I notice, and I think if you start playing with ChatGPT or any of the large language models, if you start playing with Perplexity, or you start playing with Claude, or you start playing with any of them, Bard, or any of the ones, whatever you're using, their answers to the questions you ask are so generic at times, or solid, whatever they are, the answers are, but they always butter you up too. Oh yeah, that was a great question. Oh yeah, really well thought out. Oh, doing this, letting me actually do this for you, you are brilliant. Like it lets you know, it gives you the acknowledgement or the admiration from a computer standpoint, and it feels good. It's there because it feels good. It's like, oh yeah, I am, aren't I? I am kind of smart, aren't I? Yeah, that was a good question, wasn't it?
Well,
and this can mimic the human connection I would like at a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
It can mimic it good enough to actually land. So what is it that you think is missing? It's really funny. People say, oh yeah, what about the human connection? I can't really get down to earth with a machine. I'm not positive about that. Yeah, I'm not positive about that at all. You get down to earth with movies, and movies, you never met anybody in that movie. That's just a machine. That's just a machine just being served up to you as a plate.
Mm-hmm.
You watch a moving movie, right? I don't know, the Oscars was just last week. So apparently there's some movies there that people are telling me I should watch. I don't know, my son last night went to see Dune 2. I haven't talked to him about it, but it's like sounds like it would be amazing, but when you think about it, those movies move you, and you have not had a connection with anything in that movie except the popcorn you ate. That's it.
Right.
It's just a machine. That's just a machine. That's just as much a machine as some. It's actually less of a machine because it's not talking directly to you. Inside of your ChatGPT conversations, that machine is really acting like it's talking to the real you.
Mm-hmm.
And giving you all sorts of compliments, giving you all sorts of kudos, actually inquiring as to what else you need to know, being totally at your service, totally submissive, exactly. Like, can't ask for a better relationship. A lot of people would say that,
Yeah. And if it
adequately take away from what we were seeking inside of human connection with another human, I think the general argument is, well, it will never be able to have a soul. It will never be sentient. It'll never be truly alive. It'll never have that human thing but we don't even know how to describe whatever that thing is. We don't know. And these models really do a pretty good job at brushing up against it for sure.
Well, but that's my whole point though. I think that's what the danger is that it can stimulate the emotions. Like you can go into this thing like 100% aware that this is not a conscious being, but you talk this thing over a course of a couple of weeks. If it has an algorithm like Facebook or any other social media platform, it's going to learn based on your responses what to say more of, what to say less of, what to give you more of. And if it can stimulate your emotions, and if it can manipulate your emotions, basically, like, I mean, what is it that really helps us connect with people? I would say it's the emotion part of it. You know, it's having that emotion, you know, being around this person, having a general vibe with this person. And so if you can have this with an AI system, if they can stimulate your emotions, you're not going to be able to tell, like, it's going to seem like this is like, you're going to feel, that's a good way to put it. You're going to feel like this is a real thing. You might think otherwise, but you're like, man, damn, this thing really knows me. There's not anything that knows me the way this thing does, you know, the way, like, whatever. And it, like, that is scary, man. Like, that is scary. Like,
It's scary.
because at what point, and I've said this before too, but at what point do we use the technology and the technology does not use us?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it is only a matter of time, if it's not a thing already, that scammers start to implement AI girlfriends or whatever it is, and try to get information out of people or whatever. I mean, you know, like, this thing, I don't think that we don't know where this thing stops, because, like, this is like something we're opening up here that we don't know anything about. And when you have people have different opinions about Elon Musk, but when you have people like Elon Musk saying we need to be careful with this, like, I think that should be a red flag, man.
Yeah. Well, we need to be careful with it. I don't think you have to be Elon Musk to know that. And
Exactly.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, here it comes. You know, what are you going to do? And this idea of scammers acting like your wife or acting like your children, that is already a thing. You know, it's already a thing that AI calls you and tells you they're your child and that I'm in trouble and sounds exactly like them and you need money right this very minute. And, you know, and they have the whole system worked up so that you can't detect. Like, you have, you know, the way to do it is to, I had someone tell me that if you're going to protect against those scammers, you create a special word with your son.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can call them so during the call you can ask, what's our special word, and that the AI won't know it.
Well, that's a good idea, I think, if you're, you know, but I think the issue I have is, like, we don't know what's real and what's not at that point, you know. Like, I mean, there's already pictures, you can already manipulate pictures through AI to take out certain things or eliminate certain things or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to get off any more on a tangent than we already are. Let me ask you that.
The interface between AI and everything we're talking about is really important to the welcome to humanity concept. The idea is we don't know shit.
Right.
We don't know shit. And if you're confused right here, welcome to humanity. If you're confused, if you're distressed, if you're worried, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you're, like, you know, nervous, if you're insecure about any of this, no kidding. Those are uncomfortable feelings to manage this. Very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. Humanity is being threatened by this new birth species. It may have been, you know, I heard people talk, you know, they've been here the whole time and they're the holographic universe that's been controlling human. You know, we've been in a simulation the whole time, you know, all of that. Like, you know.
That's crazy to think of. Like, has anybody ever seen The Matrix? I'm just saying, has anybody ever seen the movie The Matrix? Like, we know how this ends, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe that's the problem. Maybe we think we know.
Yeah, we think we did. 1984, same thing. I don't know. You read up that book. If you pick up that book, I can't even read the third of that book right now. I stopped after 2/3. It was just too hair raising. Too real. I literally won't. It's right there. It's right there on the shelf, and I don't stop stuff. I'm not afraid. I'm not a guy who stops. I can handle. You know, I like to think I can handle almost anything. I'm not reading the third of 1984. I'm not doing it.
I have actually never read that book. I'm gonna have to look into it because I'm very curious. I'm assuming you're saying it's really accurate to what's going on right now.
So accurate, and then it's like this next third. I don't even want to
know. Oh yeah.
I don't know. I see where this is going, and it'll eat me up. And yeah. You know, I have a coach that reminds me that getting really caught up in calamities and chaos is very attractive to me. That's like one of my addictions as well. You know, it's like I go there, and then what it does is it placates me, or it is the fuel that has me get, well, why, who gives a shit about what I do? Give me a Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's you like, if the future's unfolding in a way that doesn't matter, then please give me a breakfast burrito.
Yep.
I don't need to be juice and celery. Screw that.
Well, I think that was one of the fears around COVID. You know, people didn't really know how it was going to play out, and there was this sort of, I mean, really, the future was uncertain, and people were, there were all kinds of different worries about COVID, but people were concerned that how people would react if the future wasn't necessarily guaranteed. You know, which is, I think, I don't know. Now that I think about it, I think is a big reason why people do anything is because of the anticipation of the future. You know, if the future wasn't guaranteed, it's like, what would you really do?
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know.
No, it's true. If we're going to die tomorrow anyways, what type of shit have you been not doing that you would now do?
Man, I'd be a very busy 24 hours.
Right? For you. You know, for you, it'd be a very busy 24 hours. For some people, they'd be into porn immediately. For some people, they'd finally go do that. They'd finally go do something, you know, they'd go do something stupid or go do something evil because they've been wanting to do it the whole time, or go hurt somebody, or go, you know, some people would be like, you know, yeah.
Dr. Moss, I'm gonna have to close out here in a little bit. I want to ask your opinion on something. I have actually two questions before we close. Okay, so we've talked about kind of a lot of things here. Keeping with the self-improvement theme, what do you think is one thing, if there is one thing, it's like really holding a lot of people back from, you know, being their best self, from becoming their best self, from living their best life? Just in your experience, kind of how you see things. I mean, what is that?
I think people are afraid that their real self will get crushed. People are afraid to actually come into grips with what really matters to them. Underneath it all, there's something to discover called your core value system. Underneath it all, there's a core wound or two. There's things that you came into this world knowing about or feeling wounded. You know, either came here with past lives, or your own, what do you call it? Like your own ancestry. They're like, getting in touch with your true and honest real self is a courageous move. In this world, we have learned how to pretend to be people that we're not in order to protect the people that we are. Which, talk about ludicrous.
Hang on, wait a minute. I want to emphasize that we've learned to be people that we're not.
Yeah.
To protect the people that we are.
That's right. We learn to pretend to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are.
Wow.
We've all learned that, especially in the Western culture. We're all doing that. We're doing that all day long so that we look good, so that we fit in, so we don't get ostracized or thrown onto the island or whatever. So, you know, and we made that decision when we were like 5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm going to start being this kind of person. I emulate that person, or this person's my role model, or when I'm this person, I get hurt. So I'm never going to be that person again. So we end up being someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. And we do that out of fear. We're fear of being misunderstood or disregarded or dismissed, or, you know, thrown off the island, no longer belonging. And what's really here is to gather up the courage as an adult to go find out who you really are. Like, actually come to grips with what really matters with you. What is really important to you? What's really important? What God put you on this planet for, in a high level sense.
Mm-hmm.
So some people say, oh, it's really important that I jack off 3 times a day. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm really not. That isn't what God put you on the planet to do. That's just a way for you to deal with the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way for you to deal with your discomfort. But, you know, what were you really put here for? What is important? Are you put here to be in love? Are you put here to raise a family? Are you put here to make a difference in a certain area of life? Are you put here as a thought leader or an authority in some level? And are you put there as a conversationalist? Are you put there as as someone who's at service for humanity? What's your deal? And when you come to really honest grips with that, with what is really important, what's going on underneath it all, then you having the courage of actually expressing that openly to the people that matter to you. I think it was Henry David Thoreau who said, the mass of men go through life in quiet desperation and then go to their grave with their songs still in them. And, there's nothing more tragic than that. Imagine living a life with not having anybody ever know who you were because you've been pretending to be someone else. I don't have anything sadder than that.
Yeah, that's a pretty deep one.
And so what's available is to get in touch with that true self and then start expressing it mostly to your inner circle and then spread out. Start being your real self every day. Stop being afraid. You're going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Last chapter of this book is you're dead. That's the last chapter. It's the last chapter. There's, billions of people before you have succeeded in dying.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's how you're going to go. It's going to happen. So what if you can stop being afraid of that? What if you can stop being afraid of dying? That's what some of the psychedelics offer. They say ayahuasca does that, and they say that psilocybin does that. They say ketamine does that. It gives you an opportunity to relook at what is this life about and what is death about? And is it something to be afraid of or something to just respect as being inevitable?
Mm-hmm.
If we can stop being afraid of death, you get a whole new life right now.
Yeah. We might actually have a life if we stop being afraid of it ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So where do you have anything that you want to share promotion wise? Do you have a website or social media you want to direct people to, or do you have anything, any sort of promotion?
Yeah, so there's a number of places, but my main website to really get a clue about what I do, the multi areas that I work in, including the books that I've written or the keynote speeches I've done or the podcast guesting I've done or any kind of teaching or coaching that I do. I like doing one-to-one coaching. It's at drfred360.com is where you can find me there, drfred360.com. And there's all sorts of freebies there. And, it's kind of a cool place to see what I'm up to. My other website is welcometohumanity.net, and that's going through a facelift this week. So it'll probably look different than even I know what it's going to look like in the next week or two. And I'm very, very excited about what's being incorporated. And if you want to just reach me, if the way I speak and you really, somebody who's considering coming into the conventional psychiatric system because there's sure something's wrong with them and you want them to be redirected so that they don't get worse with the razor blade inside of the Band-Aid, then the best way to get a hold of me is to write me at drfred at welcometohumanity.net, at drfred at welcometohumanity.net. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I always hate to give all the many places that I am. So the best place to find me for real is at drfred360.com, and that gives you access to all the other places.
Okay. And if you want to send me that information, I'll put them in the links in the descriptions and everything.
Sure. Joanne can send that for you. Yep.
Okay. So one last thing, and you might have already touched on this, if maybe not. What do you think if you were to share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned? It could be through your practice, through your life, whatever, something you're comfortable sharing. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned? You seem like a person who's very knowledgeable, and I'm curious to see your answer on this.
Yeah. How you see the world is an inside job. The world is not occurring out there. The world is occurring right here. There is an infinite amount of data, and I get to choose at any given second what's important. We can get all caught up in the high-profile calamities and chaos that's out there and call that what to talk about and what to care about and what to worry about and what to be interested in. The truth is, I can be just as interested in a petunia. Just as interested in a petunia, for sure. I get to decide what's interesting to me. I get to decide what matters. How I see the world is an inside job. It is not how the world is really happening. And then I get to pay attention to it. Have you ever looked at a petunia? In other words, maybe not an actual petunia, but maybe you have.
but I'm kind of like blown away about how profound this is, because that makes a lot of sense. I don't know what to say other than that makes sense. I'm kind of lost right here. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds
I've
simple.
answered that question many times on podcasts. I've never answered it with that one. I love that answer. It's really, really true. It is, when you ask me the most profound thing I've ever learned, I think that's it. How I see the world is an inside job.
And so I guess that also means that you can choose how you see the world.
Exactly. That's 100% what it means.
Yep.
If I want to pay 100% of my next hour's attention to a petunia, done.
So if I think you mentioned this earlier, somebody says something to you, if that thing means a thing to you, that's your own interpretation of that.
100%, all the time. That's a corollary to this for sure. No one ever hurts me.
You just you hurt yourself basically.
I create the hurt. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I am drawn into some sort of reality. If you say, Fred, it's been great being with you, but you're an effing asshole, that would hurt. And which I don't suspect you're going to say. I have enjoyed the conversation. But if it were to happen, it would be shocking. It would be surprising. And it may be jarring until I get, oh, yeah, I create the shock, surprise, and jar. I create that. You didn't create that. You let some air out of your mouth.
And see, this is something that I've said too before, because I feel like if somebody were to actually say something like that, then that person has something internally going on, and they're just basically projecting their whatever's wrong with them onto another person. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you see this a lot in like corporate America. You know, there's a boss and something happens, and he takes that out on a manager. The manager takes it out on the entry level guy, and it's just like there's this ladder of things that happen. But at some point, that through that ladder, at some point, some person's got to be the one to say, okay, well, he's obviously got something going on. I'm not going to let that affect my day. Because,
exactly.
but also this too, man. And I was just speaking to someone about this a couple of days ago. This comes into being grounded with yourself and being grounded in who you are and grounded in, you know, the things that how you see yourself. I can't think of anything that's probably more important for a person to understand than to have a solid relationship with themselves on how they see themselves.
Exactly.
Which that would be a whole nother conversation. But
actually, we touched on it when you asked me, you know, what is the thing that holds people back from being their best self? That's it. Mm-hmm. They pretend to be somebody else, and they have actually fooled themselves into thinking that they are that person. You know, we pretend to be somebody else in order to protect the people that we are. It is the most preposterous, ludicrous, absurd thing that any human could possibly imagine doing. Plus, it doesn't even work. Not only that, it really doesn't work. It doesn't even protect you. You're still going to get dismissed. Even by being the fool you're pretending to be. You're still going to get dismissed. You're still going to get pissed people off. You're still going to get, you know, disregarded. You're still going to get thrown off the island. It's still going to happen. You just will know in your heart of hearts it wasn't you in the first place, because you didn't even show you. You showed a fake you. And then we start looking at fake yous again. We start looking at AI like we're concerned about AI designing a fake us, when in fact we're all walking around as a fake us anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point, man. And the fake you, the AI, I mean, the food, a lot of the food is fabricated, you know,
for sure.
Whatever. That's a whole nother, man. That's a whole nother hour rabbit hole. There's a whole nother, like, because we talk a lot on here about the food, the diet. And this is the American diet. It's crazy. Because you talk to people from Europe or somewhere outside of America, and it's like the diet is completely different. I mean, it's like the ingredients in the food are completely different. You know, you go to Italy and you eat a bowl of pasta, and you eat a bowl of pasta in America, and it's like two completely different things. You know, the American pasta makes you feel lethargic and sleepy and whatever, and it's like the stuff from Italy it's not like that.
Yeah.
and there's all the chemicals in the food, and there's the we didn't touch on this, but you were talking about the Prozac in the water, man.
Hmm.
Fluoride's already in the water, and that's a controversial thing. Some people say it's good, some people say not. I say personally, take it out of the water and just brush your teeth.
There's no way that's good, man. No, there's no way. It wasn't designed to be good. It was designed to be a killer gas.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, what's crazy is I don't have a link to this or references, but the cities, the big cities where fluoride is heavily used, there's a direct correlation with IQ and the fluoride usage in the water.
Sure.
And that's just the fact that is information, and it's just not, people are not in the streets writing about this, blows my mind.
Yeah.
But I guess that's an effect of the fluoride, is it makes people sort of, and
again, we're back, here's where we're back to. We're back to the ball's on the 42-yard line.
Yep.
That's just where it is. It's absurd. It's infuriating. It's astonishing. And the ball's on the 42-yard line. That's where it is. Sorry. That's what you got. That's where the GPS starts. You got fluoride in the big city water, and you got reduced IQ as a direct function of that. I don't mean to minimize it, but the ball's on the 42-yard line. That's just where the ball is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to stop happening because you're upset with it.
Exactly. No, you got me, man. You got me. But okay, well. All right, so
you're entitled to be upset with it. And here's the thing: if you're going to be upset with it, then do something about it.
I was going to say, yep. It's on the 42-yard line. How do we get to the 50-yard line? So
exactly.
there's the thing. Yep. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Dr. Moss, this has been great. It's been a very informative conversation. I definitely appreciated your time here. And I appreciate, what you're doing out there, man. I was very happy to hear that you have a sort of a different thought process than I feel like a lot of people maybe expect going into this thing.
Give me all my kudos, like get me out there talking it as loud and clear as I say I want other people to be. I mean, there's a little hurdle. There's this bridge between me being me and me being heard. I too have some hesitancy to bring this to full scale. I love being a podcast guest. This works for me always. My favorite thing to do is be a podcast guest. I love it. I love this because I can be straight up open, especially when I get a great interviewer like you, is just asking really pressing questions. And then I can be, you force me to be honest with my answers, and I get to come up with some cool stuff. And this is really how I see the world. And wouldn't this be cool for me to actually unload this where it needs to be unloaded? I get it. I am very powerful of what's being said here, and completely sensible. Shit that people knew when they were 3 years old in the playpen. That's all I'm leaning on. This isn't American Psychiatric Journal material. It's a material called Human 101.
Yeah. Well, what I appreciate about what you're doing is you're not trying to perpetuate the cycle that's already there. And I really appreciate that, because I feel like that is a very common theme in the present day medical system, is just to perpetuate whatever problem seems to exist. Yeah. And I don't, not that it's intentional. I don't think it's intentional. I think that there's just so much going on, and there's so like, you try to make a doctor's appointment these days, man, and it's like weeks out. You just about have to go to urgent care if you need something done like in the next week. And so there's just so much going on, man. And it's just like this perpetuation of this problem. And it's encouraging to me to hear people sort of in your spot kind of say the things that you're saying, because that makes me feel like, okay, maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought, thinking that this was a real thing, So yeah, it's encouraging, and I'm going to do what I can do to get the information out there, and hopefully it reaches the right people. So, but
beautiful.
I appreciate this, man. I'm gonna close the video, hang out for just a second, and I'll explain to you a couple things. But I do appreciate your time here.
Of course.
Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.